You think Germany and the US are pretty similar cultures, but wait until you hear some of our most random culture shocks. Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie, and along with my wife Aubrey, we are two Americans currently living in Germany and sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. If you are seeing this video, that means that we have had our baby and are actually taking a little bit of leave. So just like last week, I couldn't go completely without uploading something for you guys, so I have prepared a few videos on various themes in which I have taken some of our favorite topics from past videos and compiled them into one video on a specific theme. And I think there will be quite a few of these that you will have never seen. I will leave a link to the original videos of each part for you to check out if you would like, but with that being said, I hope you enjoy this video on a few of our most random culture shocks as Americans living in Germany. First, I have to say that we are originally from a state in the southern US called Oklahoma and now live in the southwestern German state of Rheinland-Pfalz. And that both of these places have their own unique subcultures that may not be representative of the two countries as a whole. Therefore, let me know your individual experiences with these things in the comments below and where you are from. And let's just remember, just because one place does something one way and another place does something another way doesn't always mean there are rights and wrongs. Maybe just simply different ways of doing things.
There is one German norm that, to be completely honest, has tried to divide our family, and we have had to have many discussions about whether or not we will adopt it. Donnie is in favor of going full German with this German practice, but it just goes against everything that is taught in our American culture, and I can't bring myself to become comfortable with it. And well, that is having separate duvets on the bed for each of us to have our own.
Yes, in the US, when a couple sleeps in the same bed, there will always be just one comforter, duvet, sheet, whatever the covering may be. However, in Germany, couples will each have their own duvet and not share between the two of them. This means when you have a double bed, you each have your own single duvet, and I don't think it can get any better than that. I love the idea that we don't have to fight over the covers at night. When one person rolls over and burritos themselves, the other isn't left in the cold, and I can wrap myself up in a shield from Aubrey's ice cold feet at night.
Yes, but I love the closeness, and we have no barriers for when I want to roll over and snuggle when we have just one duvet. It feels kind of like a modern day compromise of the separate twin beds for a couple you would see in 1950s television shows. To me, the US has just completed the normal progression from separate twin beds to sharing the same bed and sheets, whereas Germans are stuck somewhere in the middle. They want to be in the same bed, but they just can't give up that physical and probably emotional separation between the two people. Either way you go, this is one thing we have not completely been Germanized on yet, because to this day, we still have just one duvet. In the US, when you are getting food at a restaurant and want to save a little bit of money, you will often just order a water with your meal. When you order a water in an American restaurant, whether at the fanciest restaurants or the grungiest dives, most of the time, the default for this drink order will be a humble and simple glass of tap water. When you need a refill, they will take your glass and fill it up with more tap water, or waiters will walk around the restaurant filling up everybody's water out of one pitcher at no additional cost. Water is normally free. And for you, nothing in life is free commenters. We get it, but on the menu, it has no price where all the other drinks do, so. And that is why it is considered the cheap way of having a drink with your meal to help you save a few bucks that you would be spending on a drink as well. But in Germany, rather than just filling up a cup uneventfully from the tap, they have a completely different system.
In Germany, Restaurants do the very posh ceremony of bringing you your very own chilled and sealed bottle of water to the table with a glass on the side. The bottles are normally around 3 to 4 euros, and in most cases, you buy by the quarter or half liter. They are not just plastic water bottles either. Most of the time, they are very elegant glass bottles that resemble wine or champagne bottles. What makes this practice even more interesting to us is the fact that German tap water is the most safe and controlled beverage/food product in Germany and tastes so good that in multiple blind taste tests, tap water actually tops or equals mineral waters according to tapwater.com. So with such high quality tap water at their disposal, why do Germans serve water so differently than the US? Part of it has to do with the fact that most German restaurants make their margins from drinks, and therefore they aren't going to be handing out free cups of water like in the US, when they could be making more money by having you buy a drink. Part of it also has to do with the huge affinity Germans have with drinking carbonated water, and carbonated water not coming from the tap, but rather from bottles. Real quick, I wanted to come back to say more than ever, it would mean a lot if you supported our channel by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Also, a huge shout out to our patrons over on Patreon for supporting us in the way that they do. Again, in particular, it means a lot as we are making this huge family transition right now. Now, back to the video.
This next difference is one that, honestly, is probably the most alarming of them all. Well, at least to Donnie anyways, and most adult men in America for that matter. Well, maybe Donnie should introduce this one actually.
Okay, I'll take this one over. And one thing that adult American males don't do that German males do is, well, they sit when they urinate.
In 2015, the BBC reported on a landlord in Dusseldorf that was seeking damages from a tenant because he claimed the marble floor had been damaged by urine due to the man standing up when he urinated. However, a judge ruled that the man's method was within cultural norms, saying urinating standing up is still common practice. So do all German men sit in the restroom? Based on the judge's decision, no. However, even just the phrasing still common practice kind of gives the hint that it is old-fashioned, yet people still do it.
I can speak from first-hand experience that it definitely is something that is done, even just from the fact there will sometimes be signs over toilets that ask men politely to please sit down when they urinate. When I studied abroad in college and lived with a German family, this was even something that was brought up to the American male participants that we should do in our host home out of respect for our hosts. Now, even though you mostly use the restroom privately anyways, and people shouldn't be concerned with how you position yourself to use the toilet, in the US, this is viewed as very unmanly behavior, and American men will not do it at the risk of losing a bit of their dignity. In fact, even in Germany, a man can be called a Sitzpinkler, and the BBC article from earlier states that this is a term used to imply non-masculine behavior. So it does seem that there could be a bit of a split mind in which it is viewed as not masculine, but it is also increasingly becoming the norm amongst German men to sit and urinate. I will also point out that in German public restrooms, you definitely still will find urinals.
You may be asking, what is the point and why do some men stand and some men sit? Well, as a woman, I really don't know, but I do know that sitting is supposed to be viewed as the cleaner and more sanitary way of doing it. And that is apparently evident from the uric acid damage outside of the toilet in that particular court case in Dusseldorf. So I'm not gonna ask you personally to explain what you do in the bathroom because frankly, that does not interest me. But what does interest me, I am sure you all have heard the popular English way of saying, I have to go number 1 to refer to urinating and number 2 to refer to the other one. But is there a popular code phrase in German that people say to describe what they need to do in a restroom? In another form of communication, emails, there are 3 main differences we have noticed and find particularly interesting. First, for the first line in an American email, you capitalize the first word at the start of the sentence. However, in German emails, the first letter of the first sentence is lowercase. Using a capitalized letter here will be an immediate giveaway that you are not a native German speaker.
Second, this first sentence in American emails is typically some sort of small talk. That could be, hope you had a great weekend. How are you and your family? Or can you believe we are going into another lockdown? Hope you're handling it well. The actual purpose of the email will then follow the introductory chit chat. In contrast, German emails will typically get straight to the point. The first sentence of the email will be just like when you're talking to a person in Germany where they don't beat around the bush and immediately get down to business.
Third, German sign-offs are fairly predictable as everybody tends to use the exact same ones like viele Grüße, liebe Grüße, or mit freundlichen Grüßen as a couple of examples. But the unique thing about German sign-offs are the use of abbreviations. These tend to be used more with informal emails, but examples would be simply VG for viele Grüße, LG for liebe Grüße, or sometimes MFG for mit freundlichen Grüßen in formal emails that are a little more casual. For American emails, there really aren't any abbreviations for sign-offs, and you would always write them out like kind regards, thanks, talk to you soon, etc. Emails seem to land somewhere in between a formal letter and an informal text message, so the use of abbreviations makes sense for direct and efficient German, saving time, but for us, it took a little time to get used to because we're used to seeing abbreviations only in texts, and it felt like emails should be written out completely, but we also don't have super strong emotional feelings about how one signs off from an email. But there are some who think American email sign-offs will head that direction as they become more and more like text messages, but abbreviations just haven't really caught on yet.
We are going to start with a difference that shares the similarity that the name for it is famously difficult for non-native speakers to say in both languages. If you haven't guessed it, it is our squirrels, or in German, Eichhörnchen. Yes, our little furry tree rodents go by words that are equally hard for people from both countries to pronounce the translation of, but look very different in both countries. Because everywhere we have lived, squirrels are very common, it is one of the first things that made us feel like we were really in a foreign country when we technically saw the same animal running around over here, but they look completely different than what we were used to. So let's do a little test. Close your eyes, and when I say the word squirrel, what image pops in your head? If you are German, did you think of this? And if you are American, did you think of these guys?
Squirrels are definitely something that vary regionally, and in the US, there are 5 different types of squirrels, unlike in Germany, where there are 3 different types. But what we were mainly used to seeing in our backyards in Oklahoma was the large fox squirrel, measuring in at 10 to 15 inches and weighing up to a pound. They have small, round ears, brown, gray, and yellowish coloring, and love stealing seeds from our bird feeders. In our minds, when we think of a squirrel, this is what we see. Then we came to Germany and saw for the first time these little small red squirrels with pointy, hairy ears called European red squirrels. These squirrels are a little bit smaller than the ones we are used to, measuring in at around 8 to 9 inches and weighing around 12 ounces. Don't let their name fool you though, because European red squirrels don't actually always have to be red. For example, they can also be black or gray. Now, when we hear the word squirrel, we have confusing images in our heads of what they look like.
One of the very first things that Americans think of when they think of living in Europe is being able to take public transportation everywhere and how nobody drives in Europe. Those were our exact same thoughts before we moved to Germany, so we planned that when we arrived in Germany, we would not even buy a car. And instead, we're just going to use the trains and buses to get everywhere. When we were picking out our apartment, we tried to make sure to get one somewhat close to the local train station in our town, and we downloaded all of the public transportation apps on our phones. We also bought bikes immediately after getting here to supplement the public transportation a little and have another option to get around town.
But here's our reality. We live in a very small town that gets 1 train per hour, buses that take about an hour just to get to the largest city nearby, which normally only takes about 15 to 20 minutes to drive to, and nearly everybody relies on driving their own car. So after about 4 or 5 months, we broke down and bought a car as well. Now here's the thing, in large cities or even just mid-sized cities, the public transportation usually is fantastic and you can rely on public transport in Germany like millions do. And even in our small town, you could manage to function using just the public transportation, but your life just requires quite a bit of adjusting to the schedule. For us though, after our once-an-hour train failed to come more times than we can count, and we were stranded for hours in our town when we needed to get somewhere, we soon realized a car is much more important in certain parts of Germany than we thought. Of course, it is different from the US, where for the most part, in a vast majority of cities and towns, without a car, you literally have no chance of getting around, and in many cases, there aren't even once-an-hour trains or buses. They just don't exist.
So is the expectation of perfect public transportation just an expectation, but not really a reality? Yes and no. There are way more places that it just makes more sense to drive than we expected in Germany. But there are also a lot of places where you can function like that. For example, go to Berlin, and if you miss your bus, another will be right behind it within a couple of minutes. And it won't impact your life too much. We also know people who do function in our small town without a car. They just adjust their lifestyle a little to match the slower pace here, and it doesn't bother them at all. And don't even get us started on the world-class punctuality of DB trains. For us, our imaginary world of immediate public transport in every corner of Germany was a little off based on where we ended up living. To see who made it this far into the video, the random question of the week is Kinder versus Ritter Sport. Which is the superior chocolate brand? Thanks so much for watching, guys. Be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and we will see you in our next video.
In German culture and attending amazing amazing German festival.
Amazing.
Amazing. Oh gosh. Can't take the Oklahoma out of the girl. We get asked all the time to make a video about the differences. Hold on, okay.